in a daring and unprecedented strike that has rewritten the rules of naval warfare in the 21st century. Ukrainian forces have successfully attacked and severely damaged one of the Russian Black Sea Fleet's most prestigious and expensive warships, the guided missile frigate Admiral Grigorovich. Western intelligence agencies estimate the value of the vessel, a flagship of Russia's surface fleet in the region, at approximately $1 billion. The attack, conducted not with expensive missiles but with a swarm of long-range maritime drones, represents a catastrophic, symbolic, and strategic blow to Russian naval prestige. It demonstrates Ukraine's growing ability to project force far beyond its coastline and deep into the heart of what Moscow considered a secured maritime domain. The immediate aftermath saw the Russian Ministry of Defense issue a terse statement acknowledging an unsuccessful attack that was repelled, but satellite imagery and intercepted communications tell a different story, showing the frigate listing heavily damaged and under tow back to the port of Sevastopol. The fallout from this single engagement escalated with terrifying speed to the highest levels of nuclear rhetoric, as Russian President Vladimir Putin, in a nationally televised address from the Kremlin, cited the attack as evidence of direct NATO involvement and stated that Russia reserved the right to use all means available to protect its territory, a phrase long understood in diplomatic circles as a direct reference to its nuclear arsenal. The operation, meticulously planned and executed by Ukraine's Security Service, SBU, in coordination with naval units, unfolded under the cover of night in the Black Sea, approximately 150 miles southeast of the Ukrainian port of Odessa. According to technical analysis of footage released by Ukrainian sources, the attack involved a coordinated swarm of at least 6 Magura V-5 maritime drones. These unmanned surface vessels, a Ukrainian innovation, are low-profile, fast, and capable of carrying a significant explosive payload over hundreds of miles. They are difficult to detect on radar due to their small size and construction from materials with low radar cross-sections. The drones navigated autonomously for the majority of their journey before operators, likely stationed in a ground control center somewhere in Ukraine, took final control for the terminal attack phase. The footage shows the drones approaching the frigate from multiple vectors, complicating the ship's defensive efforts. Despite the frigate's defensive armament, including close-in weapon systems designed to shoot down incoming missiles, it was overwhelmed by the low-flying, maneuvering drones. At least 2, and possibly 3, drones are believed to have struck the vessel amidships and near the stern, causing significant damage to its superstructure, weapons, systems, and propulsion. The scale of the damage suggests the warship will be out of action for many months, if it is not a constructive total loss. The global significance of this event cannot be overstated. Firstly, it marks the continued success of Ukraine's asymmetric warfare strategy against a numerically superior naval force. Since the sinking of the cruiser Moskva in April 2022, Ukraine has systematically denied Russia control of the western Black Sea, enabling the crucial grain exports that feed the world. This attack proves that even Russia's most modern and well-defended surface combatants are not safe, effectively confining the bulk of the Black Sea Fleet to port or forcing them to operate far from Ukraine's coast. Secondly, it showcases the revolutionary impact of inexpensive, unmanned platforms on global maritime security. A billion-dollar warship, the product of decades of technological investment, was crippled by drones that cost a fraction of a single missile in the ship's own arsenal. This paradigm shift will be studied by navies around the world, from Taiwan to Iran to the United States, forcing a fundamental rethink of naval doctrine, ship design, and defensive priorities. Thirdly, and most critically, it triggered an immediate and deliberate escalation in nuclear rhetoric from the Russian presidency, moving the conflict into its most dangerous phase yet and directly challenging the post-Cold War nuclear taboo. The historical background to this moment is a tapestry of Russian naval ambition and Ukrainian ingenuity. The Black Sea Fleet has been a central pillar of Russian power projection since the era of Catherine the Great, with its home in Sevastopol, Crimea, a symbol of Moscow's historical claim to regional dominance. The illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 was, in large part, motivated by the desire to secure this naval base permanently. For Ukraine, a nation with a much smaller naval tradition, the invasion necessitated a radical, innovative approach. Drawing on a deep well of technical talent and a culture of grassroots innovation, Ukraine's defense sector rapidly evolved from modifying commercial drones to designing sophisticated, long-range unmanned systems for land, air, and sea. The maritime drones, developed and built in secret, are a product of this wartime ingenuity. Their operational success echoes historical examples of asymmetric naval victories, such as the use of explosive-laden motorboats or midget submarines, but amplified by modern GPS guidance, satellite communications, and explosive power. This attack is the culmination of a 2-year campaign that has seen Ukraine sink, damage, or destroy over 20% of the Black Sea Fleet's vessels, a staggering loss rate for a major power's navy in peacetime. The political implications within Russia are severe and multifaceted. The attack is a profound embarrassment for the Ministry of Defense and the Naval High Command. The Admiral Grigorovich is not an aging Soviet-era vessel, but a modern, Russian-built frigate, commissioned in 2016 as a symbol of the Navy's renewal. Its vulnerability exposes critical failures in fleet air, defense, operational security, and intelligence. In the hyper-competitive and blame-ridden environment of the Kremlin, such a failure will inevitably lead to internal purges, scapegoating, and further instability within the military command structure. For President Putin, the attack is a direct challenge to his narrative of Russian military invincibility and steady progress in the special military operation. His response, the explicit nuclear threat, serves multiple domestic political purposes. It is intended to rally nationalist support by presenting Russia as a besieged fortress facing an existential threat from the West. It aims to distract from the military failure by shifting the conversation to Russia's ultimate power. And it sends a stark message to any potential internal critics that the president remains willing to escalate to extremes, a demonstration of resolve meant to solidify his control. However, this gambit also carries immense risk, boxing him into a rhetorical corner where further Ukrainian successes could demand a response to maintain credibility, yet where actual nuclear use remains almost unthinkably costly. The economic impact of the strike extends beyond the staggering loss of a capital warship. The Admiral Grigorovich was a key component of Russia's Black Sea power projection, tasked with enforcing a de facto blockade and providing air defense for other fleet assets. Its incapacitation imposes immediate and costly operational burdens. Russia must now consider redeploying vessels from its northern or Pacific fleets to the Black Sea, a complex and expensive logistical undertaking requiring passage through NATO-monitored straits or accept a further reduction of its operational footprint. More broadly, the attack reinforces the profound vulnerability of Russia's critical infrastructure, both military and economic, to unmanned systems. This will force massive new investment in layered air and maritime defense systems around key ports, energy terminals, and naval bases, diverting finite resources from other war fronts. For Ukraine, the economic benefit is strategic. By neutralizing a primary anti-aircraft platform in the western Black Sea, it further secures the maritime corridor used for its agricultural exports, which are vital for its wartime economy. The success also strengthens the case for continued and enhanced Western military aid, demonstrating that provided technology can achieve disproportionate effects, potentially influencing upcoming debates in U.S. Congress and European capitals about support packages. Socially, the event creates divergent narratives within Russian and Ukrainian societies. In Ukraine, the successful drone strike is a monumental morale booster, a symbol of homegrown technological prowess and strategic creativity. It reinforces the public's belief in the capability of its military to strike back against an enemy fleet once considered invincible, fueling resilience and national pride. Within Russia, the state media's narrative will likely follow Putin's lead, framing the attack not as a Ukrainian achievement, but as an act of NATO aggression, using it to justify further mobilization, heightened censorship, and the nuclear saber-rattling. However, for the informed public and elite circles, the loss is another data point in a sequence of failures, eroding confidence in military leadership and compounding a sense of national decline. For the families of sailors, it is another trauma, with the government likely obscuring the details of casualties. The nuclear rhetoric from the top, while perhaps abstract to some, introduces a new layer of anxiety for citizens who now must contemplate the possibility of a war escalating beyond any conventional boundary, a psychological burden that deepens the sense of isolation and uncertainty about the future. International reactions were swift and deeply polarized. NATO and G7 nations issued statements condemning Russia's nuclear threats as irresponsible and unacceptable, while carefully avoiding any public celebration of the Ukrainian naval strike. Behind closed doors, however, Allied intelligence and military officials are conducting urgent assessments of the drone tactics and the implications for global maritime security. The US and UK reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine, but reiterated that their assistance is for defensive purposes, a delicate dance to avoid providing Moscow with a direct pretext for its accusations of NATO belligerence. China and India, key nations Russia relies on for diplomatic cover, issued calls for de-escalation and dialogue, but their statements notably did not endorse Russia's nuclear posturing, reflecting their own deep aversion to nuclear instability. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, resulting in a predictable stalemate but placing Russia's rhetoric on the global record. The International Atomic Energy Agency expressed grave concern, highlighting the existential risks of any nuclear rhetoric. Crucially, private diplomatic channels are believed to be intensely active, with Western officials delivering stark warnings to Moscow about the catastrophic consequences of any consideration of nuclear weapon use, while likely seeking clarity on what Russian red lines, if any, were genuinely crossed. Expert analysis from military strategists, nuclear policy scholars, and political scientists presents a consensus on the tactical success but grave concern over the strategic escalation. Naval warfare experts conclude that the era of uncontested surface vessel dominance in confined seas is over. Drone swarms represent a cheap, effective, and deniable counter to traditional naval power. This has immediate implications for conflicts worldwide, from the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea. Nuclear policy experts, however, are focused on Putin's rhetoric. While most assess the likelihood of tactical nuclear weapon use is still very low, they note a dangerous shift. The threat is now explicitly tied to a specific battlefield event rather than abstract existential risk. This coupling of conventional loss to nuclear threat is a perilous normalization, incrementally lowering the threshold for such rhetoric and, potentially, over time, for planning. Political analysts point out that Putin's threat is likely a strategic signal with multiple audiences. To Ukraine and the West, it is a warning to halt deep strikes. To the Russian elite, it is a demonstration of ruthless resolve. To the global South, it is an attempt to frame the conflict as a West-Russia showdown. The problem, experts warn, is that such signals can be misread, and repeated threats can desensitize the international community, creating a cry wolf scenario that could be catastrophically misinterpreted during a true crisis. What could happen next revolves around several clear trajectories based on observed patterns and military logic. In the immediate term, Russia will launch a fierce campaign of retaliatory missile and drone strikes against Ukrainian port infrastructure and cities, seeking a proportional response and domestic vindication. Its forces in occupied Ukraine may attempt localized offensive actions to regain the initiative. In the Black Sea, Russia will likely redeploy additional air defense assets to remaining ships and attempt more aggressive hunts for Ukrainian drone launch sites and control centers, potentially escalating strikes on Odessa and the Danube region. Politically, an internal investigation and purge within the Black Sea Fleet Command is almost certain, following the pattern seen after the sinking of the Moskva. Internationally, NATO will respond by accelerating the delivery of air defense systems to Ukraine and may increase intelligence sharing related to Black Sea Fleet movements, while also possibly initiating new, visible nuclear deterrent patrols or exercises to signal resolve in the face of Russian threats. Ukraine will seek to capitalize on its success by pushing for more long-range strike capabilities from allies and doubling down on its domestic drone production, aiming to repeat the tactical success elsewhere. The long-term global consequence is a world pushed a step closer to the precipice of nuclear conflict, a line previously thought immovable since the Cold War. The drone attack itself will be a case study in military innovation, spurring a global arms race in autonomous, swarming systems and the countermeasures to defeat them, fundamentally altering defense budgets and strategic planning from Washington to Beijing. For the war in Ukraine, the event proves that Ukrainian ingenuity can continually find asymmetrical answers to Russian mess, protracting the conflict and denying Moscow any stable victory. However, it also sets a dangerous precedent where spectacular Ukrainian successes may be met with apocalyptic Russian rhetoric, creating a volatile cycle of action and reaction. The international system now must grapple with a renewed and active nuclear threat, not from a rogue state, but from a permanent member of the UN Security Council. This will strain diplomatic circuits, test alliance cohesion, and force a somber global reckoning with the security paradigm of the 21st century, where a billion-dollar warship can be felled by a drone, and the response threatens the future of the planet. The coming weeks will be a critical test of crisis stability, measured not in territorial gains, but in the restraint of language and the sober calculations of survival in the shadow of the ultimate weapon.